welcome to my channel. This is Holly from Knits, Knots, and Loops. Today we are going to be making Poppy the pig. So you can either follow along with this pattern with your own yarn and hook, or if you've purchased one of the DIY kits from me, this is what we're going to make with the kit. So if you've had the kit, in your kit you should have some yarn. It might be a different variation of pink or a different pig color. You will have a 4.5mm hook, a tapestry needle, stuffing, a stitch marker, and a tapestry needle. Some of your items may look a little bit different than what I have in front of you, but they will all have the same use. And of course, you will also have some safety eyes in your kit as well. So we're going to get started now. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Today we're going to be making the pig in this color, just because I think it'll show up better on camera and you'll be able to see the stitches a little bit better. So to get started, you're going to need to find the end of your yarn, and we're going to grab a 4.5mm hook. This is my 4.5mm hook that I'll be using today, but it is the same size as the one that will be included in your kit. And if you don't have the kit, this is Premier Parfait Chunky. You could use this yarn or any other yarn with the appropriate sized hook to make Poppy. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start with the magic ring. You could also do the chain 2 variation, where you chain 2 and do 8 single crochets in the first loop. We are going to do the magic ring today. I'm going to go through this at a slower pace for anybody that doesn't know how to do the magic ring yet. So I'm going to put the end of the tail over my hand like this. We're going to flip our hand towards you, bring the yarn over the back of your hand, keep carrying the yarn underneath, and I like to put it over these 3 fingers because when I cross the yarn back over, I like to pin this tail down with my pinky. All right, then we're going to flip it back over and make sure that nothing has gotten crossed, because you want 2 straight lines on this side and you want the X on this side. And then we're going to go under this top of the cross here, under, over, and we're going to pull that over one through. Once you pull it through, we're going to twist the hook so it stays on your hook there. And then this top further one again, we're going to pick up that one and pull it through the loop that is already on your hook. And then you will have this ring with the tail. So you want to make sure that your ring stays straight and your tail is on the top side, following it from right to left before we get started. You can chain 1 here to make your ring perfectly round. I tend not to, just because I like the finished look of it better. So then we are going to single crochet 8 times into your magic loop. It is a little bit tricky sometimes with the chenille yarn, so I'm going to show you some of my tricks that help me get the ring tightened without breaking the yarn. So I tend to put some tension on the loop just to hold it better. Otherwise, it's kind of difficult crocheting into it. So we're going to go under, grab our yarn, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. So that's 1 single crochet. So I'm going to complete 4. And once I have completed 4, I'm going to test my magic ring. So I'm going to hold my stitches firmly and pull on the tail to make sure that it slides through. So it's not wanting to slide through. So then I go to the other end of the ring where the yarn comes out the bottom half here, and I pull back on it a little bit. And then I try again. So I find that tail. Where did it go here? There it is. So I find that tail, and then I try to pull again and tighten. And usually that works, because sometimes it'll get a little stuck depending on how tight that first loop you make is to make your magic ring. So as you can see, the yarn is stripped a little bit here of the fuzziness, which that's okay. We won't see that at all in our final project. So we're not going to pull it all the way tight yet, because we want to leave some room to finish our stitches, but we want to make sure that the ring slides so we don't have to start all over again, which sometimes it does happen, but usually at the halfway point here with 4 stitches on, that little trick works amazing. So we're going to finish our last 4 stitches here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have 8 single crochets around our ring, and now we are going to close it. So we're going to find that end again. We're going to hold our stitches and we're going to pull this ring closed. And as you can see, it's giving me some trouble again. So now I'm going to take my hook out. So I just pull on that working loop just to give it some space and get it out of the way. And sometimes, oh, there we go. If I put pressure on the first couple stitches that we did before we close the ring completely, sometimes that helps move the tail along. So now it's moving. We're going to pull it closed, and we want it closed so there's no hole in the middle here, but we don't want to pull it too tight that we're going to break this yarn tail. Okay, so now that we have it closed, I'm going to put my hook back in the working loop here and pull on the working yarn to tighten that down. So now I like to refer to it as locking in my tail. So the next round, we're going to do an increase in every stitch around. So in this first one, I like to lock my tail down. It might be a little tighter depending on how tight your single crochets were on your magic ring. So I insert into that first loop, and then I pull the tail that we used to tighten our ring on top of my hook as well. Now we're not going to use this to finish the crochet. We're going to lock it into our crochet here so it holds the loop closed and we can hide the tail at the same time. So this is just going to be resting over our hook here, and then we're going to yarn under, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and then one more stitch in that same loop with that tail still over the top here. And now sometimes if I notice a little hole here, I'll pull on the tail again just to tighten it up. And now we've locked in our tail, and now we're going to push it to the back so it's out of the way and doesn't affect our work. So we've done the one increase. Now we're going to finish increasing around in every stitch. So we're going to do 2 single crochets in each stitch around for the remaining 7 that we have. Okay, so now we've finished our 8 increases all the way around, and you should have a nice flat circle. So the next round, we are going to single crochet around in each stitch in the back loop only. So to do this, it's still a single crochet, but instead of going under both loops, we are just going to go under the back loop. And that's going to make a nice ridge so Poppy's nose sticks out. So there's 1. Oops, I lost my hook there. All right, and so you can see the 2 bumps, hopefully, of this stitch here. We are going to go under the back one only. Okay, and we're going to single crochet all the way around, and I'll meet you back here. So now I've single crocheted all the way around in the back loop only, and you can see this ridge that was formed from the front loops from not using them. So that's going to help push Poppy's nose out. And if you're wondering where the stitch marker comes in, you can put it in the first or last stitch of your round, depending on how you want to count them. And for these first couple rounds, with using thinner yarn like this, I find that the stitch marker just gets in my way, so I tend to just count them, but that is completely up to you. You can use your stitch marker, put it through both stitches of the first or last stitch of your round, and that'll help you keep track of how many stitches you've completed. So for the next round, we're going back to using both loops, and we're just going to single crochet around in all 16 stitches under both loops this time, and I'll meet you back here. All right, so now we've completed that second row going all the way around. And you can see her little nose starting to form here. So it should look like a little cup. We're going to have those front loops there sticking out to push these stitches back and make it more of a cup shape rather than a circle expanding. And you're still going to have your tail here. So you want to make sure your tail is on the inside. So it's going to be like a noodle and a little cup there. So you can tuck it in here just for it to be out of the way, or you can let it hang. That is completely up to you. So for the next round, now we're going to use our stitch marker if you haven't been already. And I will show you how I use mine. And we'll keep going with our pattern. So the next round is going to be a combination of single crochets and increasing. And we're going to single crochet one and increase in the next stitch. And in this round, we're going to do the opposite of what we did to form the nose. We're going to be using the front loops only. So we're going to single crochet and increase into the front loops only. So I usually put my stitch marker in the first stitch of the round. So I'm going to single crochet one. Oh, sorry, front loop only. So we have both loops here. We're going to be picking up just that front loop and completing our stitch. So once we've completed that first stitch, then we can put in our stitch marker into that stitch that we just made. Okay, and then we're going to put that out of the way. So now we're going to increase. So it's 2 single crochets in the same front loop. So pull up that front loop, 1 and 2. And we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around. So 1 single crochet, 1 increase. And we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around. All right, now we've completed our last increase, and as you can see, we are right back to where we started, where our stitch marker is. So we're going to remove that stitch marker before we start the next round. And in the next round, we're going to complete 3 single crochet and then an increase. So we'll do our first single crochet into both, we're working into both loops now. So single crochet, you can place your stitch marker back in that first completed single crochet if you desire. And then we're going to complete the rest of that group of 3. So 2, 3, and then increase. So we're going to work that same pattern all the way around till we get back to our stitch marker again, 3 single crochet and 1 increase. So I will be back when we finish that round. All right, now that we finished that round, we are back at our stitch marker again. And now this next round is going to be worked slightly differently. We are still increasing to make Poppy's head and her body. And we're going to remove our stitch marker. We're going to do our first single crochet. You can place your stitch marker back in that first loop that we created there. All right, so this round we are going to do 12 single crochets and then 6 increases all beside each other, and then another 12 single crochets. So we did 1, so we need to do 11 more. So there's our 12 single crochets. Now we're going to increase in the next 6 stitches. So it's the same as every other increase. We're going to complete 2 single crochets in the next 6 stitches. So there's 1, 6, and then we're going to complete 12 more single crochets. All right, so that is that round finished. And in the next row, we're going to be marking the spots for our ears. So if you have purchased the Poppy the Pig DIY kit from me, you would have had 3 stitch markers included with your package. So you can use one for marking your rounds and then one each to mark each ear. So to start this round, we will remove the stitch marker. We're going to complete the first single crochet in that round and place our stitch marker back. All right, so now it calls for 13 single crochets, and we're going to place the marker in the 13th stitch. So we've completed 1, so we need to do 12 more. Okay, so now that we have completed those, we can always count them too to make sure to always count the one that your stitch marker is in, because that is the first stitch of a round. All right, so in that 13th stitch, we are going to grab another stitch marker and mark that 13th stitch. And that is to mark where these cute little ears are going to go, because we add those after Poppy's body is completed. So it's just to give yourself a reference for where to place the eyes and where we're going to work the ears after we've completed her body. Okay, so now that we have that first one placed, we are going to work 11 more single crochets and place that marker in the 11th stitch. Okay, and now we're going to grab another stitch marker and place it. So if you did purchase the kit, thank you again. And I'm going to try to, as best I can, put 2 stitch markers of the same color and 1 of a different color. So then you don't end up with something like this where you have all 3 that are the same. These are the ears and these are the beginning of the round. Just so if you have to put your project down, say at this point, you can still tell which ones are supposed to be the ears, because they'll be the same color, and the beginning of the round will be a different color. So now that we have placed that second stitch marker to mark the second ear, we are going to complete 12 more single crochets to bring us back to the beginning of the round. And we are back at the beginning of the round, and in the next 2 rows we're going to be making these cute little bumpy front legs, and we're going to use a bobble stitch for those, and I will go through with you how to complete these bobble stitches so they poke out and make these stumpy little cute nubby legs for Poppy. So we're going to remove our stitch marker, and we're going to be completing 33 single crochets. So there's the first one of our round, and we will place the marker back into that first stitch that we've completed. And I will meet you back here after we finish those other 32 single crochets. When you get to the ears that have your stitch markers in them, we are leaving these stitch markers in for now so we can tell where to put the ears. So you have to work your stitch kind of in and around the stitch marker, but you want to make sure that you push the stitch marker to the front of your work rather than the inside, because if they're on the inside, it's going to be really hard to tell where they are and to get them out after we've finished her head and body. So we're going to push it to the front, and I kind of push it off to the left side so I can get into that same stitch where the stitch marker is and complete my single crochet. And then to work the stitch in the next stitch, I push it as far as I can to the other side, to the right, so it's not in my way of the stitch. So I push it to the other side. And this one you might have to pull on your yarn a little bit to keep that same tension with the stitch marker being in the way, and complete your next single crochet. And that's how you work around the stitch marker. And you're going to do the same thing when you get to the other ear. All right, so now we should be 3 stitches away from our stitch marker. In this next stitch here, we're going to be completing the bobble stitch that will make the front leg. So this is a little bit different than the single crochets we've been working so far. So we are going to yarn over our hook, insert our hook into that next stitch, yarn over again, and pull up a loop. So you're going to have 3 separate loops on your hook. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to only pull through 2 of them. So you should have 2 loops remaining on your hook. And then we're going to repeat that process until we have 5 loops on our hook. So yarn over, insert into that same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now we have 4. Yarn over, pull through 2, and we're back down to 3. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Now we have 4, so we need to complete that one more time. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. And now we have 5 separate loops on our hook. So now to finish off the leg, we're going to yarn over one more time, and we're going to pull through all 5 of those loops. And we're going to tighten that down a little bit so it bunches up nice here. And then we're going to finish our round with 2 single crochets in the next 2 stitches. And it's more than likely that your bobble is going to want to poke inwards, which is fine. That is easily fixable. We're going to take our hand to the inside of the work, and we're going to poke that back out. And that is our little stumpy first leg there. So now for the next round, we're going to do 2 single crochets and then another bobble stitch. So we have to remove our stitch marker. And complete our first one, second one. And we won't forget to put our stitch marker back in the first stitch of the round. And then we're going to work that bobble stitch again, which I will go through with you again. So yarn over through both loops, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And we're repeating that until there's 5 separate loops on our hook. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, our 5 loops on our hook. And we're going to yarn over one final time and pull through all 5 loops and tighten that down. Work our next single crochet, maybe 2. And then I always pull up on the working loop here to remove my hook, so it's easier to pop that bobble towards you so it is on the outside of your work for Poppy's little legs. And then we're going to finish the round with single crochets, and I'll meet you back here. So now that we're almost back around, we're going to be crocheting on top, not on top of, but into the stitches that the bobble stitch made. And you should still have 36 stitches going all the way around Poppy. So you can see here that there's 1 stitch here and 1 stitch here. So we're going to go through those at the bottom of her leg. So 1, 2, and 3. and that will help even more so push that little leg out so it's more visible. And one thing that I forgot to mention earlier is the ears are also marked here to help you figure out where the center is and to properly line up her legs so they're right underneath her. So depending on your tension, you may need to move your bobble stitch a stitch or two this way or a stitch or two that way so they line up nicely underneath her body. So they're right underneath the middle of her body and not too far off to one side or the other so she doesn't have her ears at an angle. So now that we've completed the front legs, we are going to do 3 rows of single crochet only to make her body. So 3 rows of 36 stitches, and I will meet you back here when that's done. Okay, I've done my 3 rounds, and as you can see, I switched out my stitch marker clip for a scrap piece of yarn because I wanted to show you guys that it is perfectly normal for the beginning of the round to drift off to one side, and some of you may have it perfectly aligned. It totally depends on your tension and how you crochet, but mine usually drifts off towards the right side. And all I do to use a scrap piece of yarn for a stitch marker is I kind of weave it back and forth before my first stitch of the round. So this is the end of the round, so I would kind of fold it to the inside here before I start my first stitch of the next round. So I completed my 1, 2, 3 rows, and now in the next row we are going to complete Poppy's back legs. So because my stitches veer off to the one side, we're going to do 34 single crochets before our bobble stitch. And if you had to move her front legs when we were doing those, you may need to adjust her back legs by a few stitches as well, because we want those to line up. So I'm going to do my 34 stitches and meet you guys back here. All right, so now in this next stitch, we are going to complete the bobble stitch again to make Poppy's back legs. So it's the same process as the front legs. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 until we have 5 loops on our hook. And then yarn over, pull through all of them, tighten that down a little, and then we only have 1 stitch left to finish our round. And we're going to pop that leg out. Then we're going to start our next round, and we're going to complete 3 single crochets. So between each leg, we have 4 single crochets. And then we're going to complete our next bobble stitch here for her last leg. Do our next single crochet and then pop that leg out. And we're going to finish our round single crocheting all the way around until we get back to our stitch marker. Now that we are back to our stitch marker, we are going to start our decrease rounds. So we are going to single crochet 4 and then decrease. And we're going to repeat that 6 times. And I like to do the invisible decrease. So we are going to pick up the front stitch only, or the front loop only of the next stitch, and then twist our hook to grab the next front loop only of the stitch beside it. And then we're going to complete our stitch like normal. And that is how we do our invisible crochet. So I'll show you again. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to pick up not both, but the front loop only of our next stitch, and then the front loop beside it. So they're kind of smushed together, but you have 3 loops on your hook at this point. And then you're going to complete your single crochet like normal. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. All right, now we are going to place our eyes. So I always pull my working loop nice and long so I can take my hook out and set it aside and not worrying about losing any stitches. So we're going to grab some eyes here. So these are the eyes that would be included in your kit. I believe they're 12 millimeters if you're following along at home with your own supplies. And we're going to insert those between rounds 6 and 7, about 5 stitches apart. So we're going to count our middle ring as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's 7. So I'm going to place this one in between 6 and 7, just to the inside of our ear stitch marker. And then we're going to go count over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So I like to place them just to the inside of our ear markers here. And then we're going to push, how I like to do them is I push on the eyes and flip my work kind of halfway inside out. And then we're going to get the backings of our eyes, if you haven't used safety eyes before. And we're going to take one and we're going to put it on top of the little peg that's coming out the back here. And I use my thumbs and the sides of my fingers here. I push with my thumb and pull with my fingers so that washer gets on nice and snug on the eye here. Now you do have the option to grab a lighter and kind of melt this post and push it down a little if you desire to. I personally don't do that on these ones because these are pretty snug in here. I'm not too worried about them going anywhere. And now that we have our eyes placed, we are going to continue decreasing on Poppy here. And in this next round, we're going to be making her cute little curly tail. So to start the next round here, we are going to be decreasing in this round as well as making the tail. So we're going to single crochet 3 and then decrease 3 times. So we have 1, 2, 3, and decrease, and that's 1 set. And then we are going to single crochet 2. Again, with Poppy's tail, you might need to move it a couple stitches left or right. Just make sure you remember where in your pattern you are. So this round is 3 single crochets, 1 decrease, and we're doing that all the way around. You may need to adjust her tail left or right so it ends up at the back centered between her eyes here or centered to her feet, just so her tail sticks up nice and right in the middle of her. So we've single crocheted 2, and in the next stitch we are going to grab just the front loop only of the next stitch and do a slip stitch. So yarn over, pull through, and now we're going to chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to start in the second chain from your hook, and we're going to work back down the chain, completing 3 single crochets in each of our chains. So we're going to skip the one right next to our hook, and we're going to go into the next one. And for the tail, I like to switch from yarn under to yarn over because the stitches end up just a little bigger and fluffier, just to give her tail a little more added dimension here. So as you can see, the tail is going to start to curl as you work those 3 single crochets into each chain. So we're skipping that first one from the hook, so there should be 5 chains where you work 3 single crochets into each of them. Oops, I lost my hook there. 1, 2, 3. All right, and now that stitch on the body where we pulled up the front loop and did a slip stitch, we're going to go into that same front loop and complete another slip stitch. All right, so that is now your tail completed. And before we started the tail, we did 2 single crochets after our decrease here, and this front loop only where we made the tail acts as our 3rd single crochet in that group. So next we're going to work our decrease to keep that pattern up. And then we're going to complete the round, finishing off that pattern. So 3 single crochet, decrease, and that finishes off that decrease round and makes your cute little curly tail. So for the next round, we're still decreasing, and I will show you how to work around that tail so it remains sticking out and nice and curly. So for the next round, I'm just going to flip my stitch marker over here. And you can really see now that that stitch marker is drifting off towards the right, and that is perfectly fine and perfectly normal. Just if yours ends up straight or drifting the other way, make sure you adjust your legs and your tail accordingly so they all line up. So this next round, we're going to be decreasing in our first stitch and then single crocheting 2. And same thing, decrease, single crochet 2 all the way around, and I will meet you at the tail to show you how to deal with that guy. All right, so my tail ended up being at the perfect point where I can decrease in the 2 stitches right before the tail. So now I have to complete my 2 single crochets. So I'm going to pull my work towards me and push that tail out of the way. We're going to find that back loop that we didn't use in the previous round for the tail and put our single crochet in that back loop only. And then going to push your tail to the side and work our other single crochet in the stitch right beside the tail. And you can use a stitch marker to mark that if you want, because we did complete 2 slip stitches into that front loop where the tail goes. You don't want to use those slip stitches. You want to crochet in that back loop that we didn't use and the first single crochet that you completed beside the tail in the previous round. And then we're going to finish off our round here. And now we are almost done. At this point here, you can start stuffing Poppy. Make sure you get it into her nose. Try and keep her nose shape kind of sticking out. It will flare out a little bit, but you want to try and stuff it so you can kind of keep the cute little piggy snout that she has. Okay, now that I have Poppy most of the way stuffed, you don't want to overstuff her. I'm actually going to take a little bit of this back out. We are going to complete the last round of her body, and it's simply just 1 single crochet, 1 decrease all the way around. And I will meet you back here when that is done. One tip too for single crocheting when it's already stuffed is I keep one finger kind of pushed inside on the stuffing to try and keep it out of the way of my stitches so I don't pull up the stuffing that's in there with my stitches. And now that we've completed our last row, we can slip stitch into the next stitch, and then I pull up a bigger working loop here, and then you can take your scissors or you can simply break the yarn, whichever is your preference. And I leave a tail about that long, and I cut my yarn. Go back to the working loop and pull that all the way through. So with this kind of stitch marker too, I like doing this because it's easier to count. If you're doing a bunch of straight rows in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you can count how many rows you've completed quite easily. So that's another option for a stitch marker too, if you're doing a lot of rows of the same amount of single crochet. And to remove it, you simply just pull it out and you would never know it was there. So now that Poppy is complete, we can tuck a little more stuff in here to fill out her back end. And make sure she's nice and plump and round. All right, and that should be good. You want to try and poke some stuffing down into the little legs too to make sure they pop out. And then we're going to close her up. So we're going to take our tapestry needle and thread it with the end of the yarn that we cut off. And then we're going to go around, and I like to pick up just the front loops only to close her. So you can kind of weave it back and forth if you want, like this, or you can pick up each of them individually. So I go through the front loop from the outside in, or you can pick up 2 at a time. So outside in and inside out. And you're going to pick up your stitches all the way around. You can go through both. I prefer just to go through the front loop only. I find it gives it a little bit of a cleaner look when it's finished. And now I push that stuffing in, and because this yarn is breakable if you pull too hard, I kind of like to squeeze the opening closed while I'm pulling the tail to give it less of a chance to break. So now we're going to finish it off. I just pick any spot that's close to where my yarn tail came out, put through my hook. I don't pull it through completely because then I go back through this loop here to pull it closed. And again, you make sure you want to not pull too tight so we don't break that yarn. And I do that about 2 or 3 times, and then I go through the knot that I just made with my needle and push it as far to one side of the body as I can to pull out that yarn. And you don't want to pull that tail too tight because it will start to pucker in and give you kind of a not round shape. If that happens, that's okay. To fix it, I usually just stick my needle in and pull it up and around to round that out a bit more. And then we snip off our yarn tail. And now Poppy's body is complete, and we just have to do her ears. Right, and now for our final touch, we are going to complete the ears. Oh, I have the hiccups. Okay, so we're gonna go back to where our, our stitch markers were. And we're going to start with the right one. So, we're gonna go in right beside it and come out that stitch. And I like to do that first before I remove the stitch marker, so I know exactly where I need to be. We're gonna take our yarn, we're gonna yarn over, and we're going to pull up a loop and do a slip stitch. And in that same loop that we went under, we are going to do a single crochet, a half double crochet. So we're going to yarn over, go through that same loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on the hook. Then we're going to chain 1. And in this, we're going to go into the stitch beside it now. Repeat that in the reverse. So we're going to half double crochet first. So yarn over, insert right side where we were coming out and up through the next stitch. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. And then single crochet. So insert, yarn over, pull through, and then we're going to do a slip stitch in that same stitch as well. And then we're going to cut a little bit of a tail here and pull that all the way through. And now we have this cute little ear. And just for a little bit of an added touch here, I like to go through that first single crochet and pull that first tail to the outside. And then we're going to take both ends of the tails and tie 1, 2 knots in front. And then we take the ends, thread them through our tapestry needle, and then I like to go in to the head right about where that knot is and push towards the back and pull those tails through. And then you pull up on your ear just a little bit. And there is 1 ear completed. And we're going to snip these tails off that we just pulled through. And we're going to complete our other ear. So the other ear we're going to do just slightly differently. Not a whole lot. This time we're going to go in just to the right of the stitch marker. And then remove our stitch marker. So then our ears end up nice and even. So we're gonna put our yarn there, pull through, complete our slip stitch. In the same stitch, we do our single crochet and our half double crochet. Chain 1, and then the stitch beside we do the opposite. Half double crochet, a single crochet, and our slip stitch. Oops. Let's try that again. And our slip stitch. And then we're going to cut a tail, pull it through, tie our knots, and insert that, push it out the back, fix up our little ear here, cut these tails, and now you have your finished Poppy. Ta-da! I hope you're happy with her. Make sure you tag me with your finished products. I would love to see them on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, anywhere. I will link all of my socials below. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel for some more free patterns. Thank you guys for watching. Bye!